Are we rolling? Yes, we are. What's up, guys? It's your boy McKinley Crain here, and today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free movie review of the movie that I just watched earlier today, which is the 2020 drama comedy Soul. So, like I said, Soul is a 2020 drama comedy that just came out. And it's the newest movie from Pixar, which is owned by Disney. So it's the newest movie from Disney and Pixar. And before we get into any more of this review, I would just like to say Merry Christmas. It's December 25th, 2020 right now as I'm filming. And I would just like to say that I've had a pretty good Christmas, and I hope you guys are having a pretty good Christmas, or have had a pretty good Christmas. Depending on when you're watching this. Anyway, this is a animated movie that stars Jamie Foxx as Joe Gardner, who is who's a middle school band teacher who loves jazz music. It's his hobby. It's his obsession. It's his. He's determined. He's determined to He's determined to go big in jazz. His dream is to play gigs, play jazz gigs, and perform perform jazz music for lots and lots of people. He just wants to be a jazz performer. And he loves music. It's his favorite thing. Specifically jazz music. And the problem is people had always told him that he wasn't good enough to be a jazz performer, stuff like that, which is why he just ended up being a middle school band teacher, which he didn't like very much in this movie. He doesn't like very much in this movie. But in this movie he's still determined to become a jazz performer. He's still determined to become a jazz performer, and he gets a gig. He finally gets a gig with with a musician that he really likes, a jazz musician that he's really fond of. And as he's walking home, he falls through a pothole and dies. And he wakes up, and the great, and the spirit world, Pixar's version of the spirit world. It's like Pixar's version of heaven, if that makes sense. But it's like Pixar's version. It's not one specific idea of heaven from all of the religions in the world. It's just their version of heaven. Their idea of heaven. He wakes up there, and he doesn't want to be there, and he tries to get home. And he's in his soul form, and so basically he's just trying to get home back into his body, because he knows that he wasn't ready to die. and he's trying to get back into his body and back home so he can, like, live out the rest of his life. And along the way, he, like, basically gets mixed up into, like, this thing that they have in, like, their version of, like, Pixar's version of The Great Beyond, where, like, dead people who have already lived their lives are supposed to, like, mentor and, like, just help find them. All right, so basically, let me just rephrase this. So he gets mixed up into, like, this thing where, like, in The Great Beyond, like, they have, like, a recently deceased person who's, like, lived their life. Well, it doesn't have to be recently deceased. It just has to be deceased. Like, a deceased person who's, like, lived their life on Earth and, like, knows how it works on Earth. And, like, it pairs, like, people who, like, like the beings from the Great Beyond, like, pair these people with, like, souls that haven't, like, lived in, like, a human body on Earth yet. They haven't lived on Earth yet. And, like, so basically, they're supposed to, like, mentor, act as a mentor to, like, these new souls, like, preborn souls, and, like, help them, like, find their spark, help them find their purpose in life. And, Joe basically ends up getting paired up with soul number 22, or just 22, who is played by Tina Fey. Who is a soul who doesn't want to go to Earth, and, thinks that Earth is pointless and, like, boring, and it's better in the spirit realm. And, like, Joe is, like, Joe thinks that, like, if he can help these, like, if he can, like, help a being get to, like, be ready to go to Earth, he'll get an Earth pass, and he'll, like, he'll get to go back in his body. And when he finds out that, like, number 22 doesn't want to go back and... Wait a minute, I don't really know 22's specific gender, because they never mention soul number 22's actual gender, and it's pretty hard to, like, it's pretty hard to tell. I'm just gonna say that number 22 is a girl, because number 22 is played by Tina Fey, and Tina Fey is a female. So, like, I'm gonna call soul number 22 a she, even though it's really hard to tell what soul number 22's gender is, because, they never mention it in the film, and it's really hard to tell because, soul number 22 has a girl's voice, but, like, soul number 22, like, hasn't gone to Earth yet, so, like, you can assume that, like, you might assume that soul number 22 is just a boy, that, like, it's just a boy because, before both males hit puberty, like, they have a girly voice, a high voice, and then once they go through puberty or hit that point in puberty, like, their voice turns deep, like this one. So you might assume that, like, soul number 22 is a boy. Plus, soul number 22 just kind of looks like a boy. But, like, it's a soul, and, like, not very many of the souls in this movie, like, look like they have a certain gender. Like, you can just tell a lot of the souls' genders by their voices and stuff like that. And you can, like, some souls have, like, long girly hair, so, you can tell their genders, but, like, you can't really tell soul number 22's gender. It's like, But Soul Number 22 is played by Tina Fey, who's a female, so I'm going to just assume that Soul Number 22 is a girl. If I'm wrong, and like Disney just reveals the gender later, sorry. But I'm just gonna call Soul Number 2 she. So when Joe Gardner finds out that she doesn't, Soul Number 22 doesn't want to go to Earth, he sees this as a great opportunity for him to go back to Earth. He tells her that if he tells her that once she earns the Earth Pass and she doesn't want it, she can just give it to him, and so he can go back. He can basically go back to his own body, and yeah. So yeah, that's what this movie is about, and it's a great movie. It's not a perfect movie. Nothing about this movie is perfect, but everything about this movie is great. Nothing is wrong with this movie. It's got a great story. It's the premise and the theme of this movie is very unique and very creative, and that's a good thing. And the story is very original. Well, it's mostly original, and that's a good thing for this movie. Some parts of this movie are predictable and a little bit cliche, but it's good. It benefits this movie for certain aspects of this of this movie's stories to be cliche and predictable. It's necessary for those certain aspects to be a little bit cliche and predictable for this movie's story to work. But it's a good thing. This movie has great voice acting. Jamie Foxx does the best job at acting. Tina Fey's a close second for this movie's best voice acting performance. But Jamie Foxx just gives it all out more than anyone else does. The whole cast is great, but Jamie Foxx is the best. Gives the best performance overall. Just the character chemistry is great. I love the chemistry between Joe and the people in his life, and and his chemistry with Number 22. Soul Number 22. It's great. This movie can be very heartwarming at times, like a lot of Pixar movies can be. It's just the humor in here works. The humor that's in here works. This is like a dramedy in my opinion. There's a lot of drama in here, but overall it's like a comedy film. But it's not like an extreme comedy film where humor, the story just relies on humor a lot, like one of those movies that were it's just a hard comedy, humor is a huge part of the story, Anchorman, and there's nothing wrong with that. That movie's great. That movie's awesome. And that movie works in its own way, and it's great in its own way. This movie isn't like one of those hard comedies. It's a comedy movie technically, but it's like a soft comedy. It's like a drama comedy. There's a lot of drama in there too. It's a dramedy. If that makes sense, and that works. That works. This movie's great in its own way. And I love this movie. This movie has a familiar message that has been in movies before, but it's a great one. And this movie takes that message and expresses it in its own creative way. That's good for this movie. It's great for this movie. And I love this movie's message. It's a great message. And this isn't my favorite Pixar movie, but it's one of my favorites. Um, it's a great movie, and it's just a great watch, and it's really fun. Um, it's really fun and just really it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film, and it's I had a blast watching it. It's very compelling. Anyway, I'm gonna give this movie an 86% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an A minus. And before I leave, I would just like to say that this is one of my favorite animated films of 2020. This isn't the best animated film of 2020 in my opinion, but it's one of the best animated films of 2020. Anyway, like I said, like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return. And if you've seen this movie, tell me in the comments down below what you thought of it. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you have mixed feelings about it? Did you hate it? Did you mildly dislike it? What'd you think? Tell me down below. Anyway, like I said, like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return. And once again, Merry Christmas.